coughing up blood, drowning in my own lungs. I had emergency surgery to remove the blood clot, and when they opened up the pulmonary artery, they saw it was a large tumor. It was a pulmonary artery sarcoma that had destroyed my right lung. So I had to have a right pneumonectomy. And so imagine this, I go to sleep thinking that I'm having a blood clot removed. I wake up, I'm missing a right lung, and I'm told I have a 100% fatal disease. There's only around 10 cases a year, and they're all found at autopsy. So it's an interesting story if you're, and so there was no treatment, chemo known for it.
Mm-hmm.
It was never treated. So, you kind of rely on the closest sarcoma treatments, but I was doing my research, and the statistics were dismal. So I was looking around, and I saw a study that was done on patients with end-stage disease that were using doxorubicin and a drug called Olera. And those patients that received Olera with doxorubicin had a 14-month survival benefit. So I said, wow, that's cool. So even though I didn't have, after they took out the lung, they couldn't find any cancer anywhere. So I might have had microscopic disease, but I didn't have any macroscopic disease. So I wasn't technically end stage, but I made a mental note to go see my oncologist and ask him about it. So when I went to Dr. Gary Schwartz in Columbia, so I brought it up. He says, I was part of the team that developed this drug. I said, what? He goes, yeah, I wrote the paper. So the paper I read was his. So I said, listen, you're the man I want to talk to. And I said, I want to take this for prophylaxis, he goes, well, we're looking to do a study in a year about it. I said, no, I want to be around in a year. I want to. So I was patient number one, actually, I kind of found my own treatment. So I took doxorubicin Olera for 10 months, and a rather unpleasant experience, I have to tell you.
It has serious cardiac side effects, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but for 3 years I was clean, and then in the middle of this pandemic, in May, I went for a routine CAT scan, and they found a recurrence in my pulmonary artery attached to my pulmonic valve, and it spread to my left hip. So I had emergency heart surgery again, and they had to replace my heart valve, pulmonic valve, and had to reconstruct my pulmonary artery, whatever's left of it, again. And then I had radiation in my hip, and now I'm on chemo. And I was on oral chemo. I was on 4 drugs, IV chemo, and they threw me into heart failure. And my EF is 30, so I had to stop the IV. So the reason why I'm telling you this, that this was in the middle of developing this treatment. So I actually practice telemedicine now, because my doctor doesn't really want me to see patients. But I have to tell you that my experience, my own personal illness, predisposed me to dealing with this pandemic in 2 ways. One, I learned that if there's no answer to something, you could find an answer. Mm-hmm. So there was no answer for my cancer approach, so I decided to find one. I had skin in the game, If there's no answer for COVID-19 treatment, so go find one, Mm-hmm. That's number one. Number 2, I actually thought I was going to die, and I had 8 children, and I started preparing. I actually wrote a letter to them, which later I made into a book, autobiographical book. But I wanted them, they're young, and I wanted them to know who their father was. So I was psychologically and emotionally preparing to die. And then God said, I don't want to see you yet. But what's interesting is that when I thought I was going to die, I stopped fearing human beings. Because I thought I was going to be meeting God, and that's pretty surreal, And so what do I care what other people think? And then I didn't die, but the lack of fear of human beings stayed with me. And that is a very useful thing right now, because I have stepped on the toes, inadvertently be it, but still stepped on the toes of some very lethal people and organizations and interests, whether it's the liberal left before a presidential election or now after, or the pharmaceutical industry or the globalists or whoever. But whoever is using fear as a tool to intimidate and enslave humanity, my approach is a threat. And at this point, I had a mentor. I used to study his teachings. His name is Rabbi Joseph Schneerson, And he was in 1927 imprisoned and tortured by the NKVD, the precursors of the KGB. And they took out a gun and they put it to his head and they said, this toy has made many people speak. They wanted to know where the underground synagogues were and Jewish institutions. So he said, perhaps someone who has many gods in one world, but someone who has one God in two worlds, this world and the world to come, it's ineffective. So that's my answer to all the people that are threatening me. I have one God in two worlds. I live between them anyway.
Yeah.
So, and probably by getting rid of me, the message will be amplified as a martyr. But not that I want to go, but I'm just telling you that there's some really bad people in this world that have said hello to me. And, but what's more important to me is that humanity becomes more God-centered, nicer to each other, common sense returns to the world, that we get rid of idolatry and slavery, and that we promote the world will be redeemed with acts of goodness and kindness. And the way that's going to happen is you have to go back to the basics, 10 Commandments. You don't have to get too fancy. This society needs a foundation, a moral foundation to ground us so that we can move in the direction of divinity and maintain the blessing of God in our country. That is my personal belief and commentary. And I think that COVID-19 has really brought that to the head, that how important it is God-conscious living.
Well, you're making a dent and you're really helping many people understand the misinformation that's being directed and censorship of valuable tools to help them with this resource and diminish the fear, which seems to be more toxic than the pandemic itself. So what is your current strategy? I mean, what is the plans, and assuming you continue to maintain your health? I mean, are you doing anything for the? Are you taking chemo now? You said.
Yeah, I'm taking Sutent. It's a TKI, tyrosine kinase.
Okay.
My last PET scan, which was last week, was clean, thank God. And my heart failure is better. I can walk now. Obviously, I'm not. My body, my will is stronger than what my body could do.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, in my book, in the last chapter, I wrote something that people really freak out about. I thank God for giving me cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked me, like, how can you say that? I said, because my whole life I was running around looking for some type of inner satisfaction, serenity, peace.
Mm-hmm.
And it always eluded me until I got cancer and learned to appreciate living without pain and being able to breathe and walk. Mm-hmm. And when I'm able to do that and enjoy the act of being, just being, and how priceless that is, I had to pay a big price for that, but it's I would never give it up either. There's a saying, I would never want to go to prison, but the fruits that I got from being there, I wouldn't want to give up. I would never choose to have cancer and heart surgery twice, chemo twice, radiation, but no one asked me, right? But now that I'm here and the emotional and, let's say, psychological and spiritual development that it led to, I would never give up either. So it's, I'm in a very serene, emotional, inner place, more than I've ever been in my life. And for that, I thank God for giving me cancer. My agenda is education, spreading, because this is an information war. This is a propaganda war. And there's a lot of false narrative being pumped into the heads of people to create fear. So you have to, in the Psalms of David, it says, with crooked people, you have to deal crookedly. You have to hide. It also says in the Talmud, you should learn from a thief. So I actually learned from the enemy, and I used their tactics to counter them. And the main tactic is the spread of truth. And by the way, it's no longer dependent on me. I have now second and third and fourth generation leaders that are taking on the mission and are really spreading the knowledge worldwide. It's unstoppable. They could try to slow it down, and they are, but the truth will come out. The truth is coming out. And when the truth will be revealed, the people that try to obstruct it and use the lies to slaughter will be destroyed by it, God willing.
What are the chances of that happening? How likely do you think that will be?
Very high. I'm a big optimist.
Really?
I'm a huge optimist. I am now more optimistic than I've ever been, simply because there's no more confusion.
Mm-hmm.
Life was very confusing. You didn't know what was good, what was bad. Now it's very clear. There's much more bad. That's true. But I know where it is. I know where the enemy is, and I know where the good is. And a little light pushes away a lot of darkness, right?
Yeah.
So there's a God in the world. Look, ultimately, our salvation depends. I don't see a natural solution here, but ultimately, our salvation depends on the grace of God.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the world is primed to open their consciousness, their minds, heart, souls to spirituality and to introspection because of the psychotrauma that we all went through. We realize what's important and what's not important.
And to facilitate this end result, what is your recommendation for the average person? What can they do to accelerate this process?
Jung, the psychoanalyst Carl Jung, wrote that the degradation of a society begins with the degradation of the individual. Mm-hmm. And that the leadership of a society is the embodiment of the collective moral fiber of a country. Mm-hmm. You can draw your own conclusions about the state of affairs. So my recommendation would be to go in the opposite direction, that if the degradation of the individual leads to damnation, then the refinement of the individual will lead to redemption. Of each person has to take responsibility for their own life. Stop blaming other people if things don't go your way. Don't compare yourself to others, but compare yourself to what your potential is. And obviously, no one's living up to their fullest potential, and you have to work on yourself to subjugate the base animalistic tendencies that we all have, and try to use them for a divine purpose. And I believe that that's really, I can't control what you do. I can barely control what I do. But my realm of free choice falls upon how I think, how I speak, and how I act. That's where my free will is. And I am trying personally to be better. We're all human beings. We're all imperfect. We all make mistakes. You know, I heard a nice saying, the definition of success is to go from failure to failure without a loss of enthusiasm. Okay, so you fail, but eventually, perseverance, you will get to a better place. And when you get to a better place, it inspires others. It builds a momentum and an energy that is unstoppable. And because it is infused with the divine blessing, in God we trust, you know, so then we become unstoppable. But again, if we throw off the yoke of heaven, you know, I thought of a statement. There's only one free person in this world, is someone who chooses, the operative word, chooses to be a slave to God. If I choose to subjugate myself to the Creator, then the yoke of other people and other nations and my own inadequacies are taken off of me. So I choose to bow down to the Creator and try to be better every day. I mean, I'm far from perfect, believe me. Ask my wife. But you know, I'm a work in progress, like we all are.
Well, it's good to say we all are. Wow, this has been quite a surprise. I was not expecting this type of deep dive philosophical commentary on what we've gone through and what we could potentially expect, and practical recommendations like this. But I deeply appreciate it. I appreciate you and your efforts and your commitment and your willingness to really spread this type of information despite the discrediting and vilifications that's occurred as a result, and the deep information that you're providing for so many people. So Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you. And thank you for the platform, and God bless you and God bless America.